This content is brought to you by Uphold, which makes crypto investing easy. I've been a user of Uphold since 2017. They're one of my go-to exchanges. You can buy, sell, and trade cryptocurrencies on Uphold. You can also trade precious metals and equities. They have 10 plus million users, 250 plus cryptocurrencies, and they're available in 150 countries. As with all exchanges, you can buy and sell on them, but I highly recommend you custody your own crypto, not your keys, not your coins. If you'd like to learn more about Uphold, please visit the link in the description. Welcome back to the Thinking Crypto podcast, your home for cryptocurrency news and interviews. With me today is Bob Wei, who's the Chief Product Officer at xSpectar. Bob, it's great to have you on.
Really great to be here. Thanks for giving me the time to talk to you.
Yeah, Bob, I'm excited. I followed you on Twitter. I've seen your different interviews, and of course, noticed that you spend time at Ripple, and of course, been doing different things with XRP and so forth. I would love to get started with your background, though. Where are you from? Where'd you grow up? What's your professional background?
So my professional background is software engineer. I just got a computer science degree in the early days back in the 80s and been working as a professional software engineer for most of that time. I worked around the Houston area, most notably at Johnson Space Center, and worked there for the artificial intelligence group. We had a very, very early AI stuff back in the 80s, if you can imagine. And
Wait a minute, AI in the 80s? Is that for real?
yeah, that was when it was invented. So there was in the 80s, AI was a lot of different techniques. There were expert systems, which we had a group that's in genetic algorithms, and neural networks was a subclass of AI, which is essentially what large language models are now. But the neural networks at the time were very few layers. That was before they called them deep learning neural networks. And they were limited by the hardware of the computers you had at the time. So like all the theory was there. They worked logically the same way. They were just like this big. And now they would span the horizon with, all the connections that they're doing now. So yeah, we did AI. We did a lot of what we called simulation-based training, which was a class of artificial intelligence where NASA uses a lot of specialty equipment, right? Like there was a space hab training module that flew in the back of the space shuttle and instrument pointing systems and things. So they're all one-off custom-built hardware. And so the people who build it have to train the astronauts how to use it, and they have to do it in a super detailed fashion because there's no call the tech guy and he'll be over, next Tuesday kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so what our group did was basically simulate the whole bit of hardware in software so that we could throw faults. We would simulate all the control panels and everything, and people would run through all of the processes, and we would run our own artificial intelligence or little expert systems in the back that would notice when they make mistakes and try to deduce why they made the mistake. Usually people don't make accidental mistakes. They make mistakes because they understand something incorrectly. And so we worked on we named it after a high school teacher. I actually did a system that taught high school physics on early Macintoshes in the area. It was a hoot. But so anyway, all of that in the NASA and spin-off technology area.
Do you ever sit back and look at, wow, I was working on artificial intelligence in the 80s and it's 2023, and look at what's happening with the world with this AI boom and chat GPT and all these new technologies, and are you like, wow, look how far we've come?
You want to hear something else crazy? I put on my first virtual reality headset in 1988
Wow.
at NASA. There was another group that my wife actually worked for that my wife actually did 3D modeling, and her group did all the graphics for NASA you see on TV.
Oh,
When
wow.
they would show a shuttle going around the Earth and the arms grabbing things. They literally modeled every nut and bolt like on the space shuttle, and had these super high fidelity models that they would render. But in the process, they did virtual reality training. So they literally built headsets by tearing apart camcorders at the time. And you're pretty young, you may not even remember camcorders. But in the early days of those camcorders, they had little CRT screens in them, about 2 inches inside the viewfinder. And they're
Mm.
like, oh, we can use those. So people were tearing the cameras apart, rewiring those, putting them into, I think it was like a motorcycle helmet with, stuff strapped on the front, and then some motion trackers, and building their own system. Another guy built what it was an acronym called a cave, a VR cave. Forgot what cave stands for, but it was literally a whole room dedicated to VR with projectors
Wow.
projecting on the walls where you would track your head and you would move, and it would move all of the images. So you didn't have to have a headset. Um, and so anyway, that goes all the way back to the late 80s, early 90s stuff that I was doing, and then never touched again.
Mm.
And suddenly all this stuff is apropos again. It's crazy.
Yeah, really, really crazy. It's a brave new world and how things are moving so fast. So, what was your first encounter? Usually, it's everyone encounters Bitcoin at first from a crypto perspective. What was your first encounter with Bitcoin? What was your aha moment, and how did that lead to you working at Ripple?
Oh, so it's funny. I first encountered Bitcoin um 2010, I think it was. It was after the second article that went in Slashdot, and I happened to find it.
Mm.
But funny enough, if you remember way back when, what the other conversations going on at the time were, it was all about socialized medicine. And it was even pre Obamacare, but it was all people talking about we need to have socialized medicine because, well, whatever the reasons are.
Hmm.
And love it or hate it, one of the arguments that they were making was people are too fat. And if we're going to have socialized medicine, people are going to have to stop eating at McDonald's. So we're going to have to be monitoring to make sure people aren't eating too many cheeseburgers and too many French fries, because otherwise they're going to be breaking the healthcare system for all of the rest of us people. And oddly enough, it pissed me off because, I like cheeseburgers, right? And I've never been abnormally slim or anything, right? But I've never been, totally out of control. So I thought, I don't want you monitoring what I eat, and I don't want socialized medicine. And I don't want, that's not an excuse for the other thing. I'm more libertarian at heart. And so at that same time, I was thinking, they were tracking everything through credit cards and the payment system. And what I got thinking about it was we need money that works over the internet. That was my basic thought. And I was brainstorming
Mm.
how to invent a money that just works over the internet where I could just send it to you right now. And it was in all of that mania thinking about all of this stuff that suddenly this Slashdot article popped up about Bitcoin. And so if you go to the Bitcoin Talk forums, you used to be able to see your user number in the forums.
Hmm.
I think it was 315 in on Bitcoin Talk. So now it's in 5 or 6 digits, the number of users there. So I was within the first 3 digits of people who discovered Bitcoin,
Wow.
and it was when Satoshi was still around. I actually had private message threads and forum posts with Satoshi,
Wow.
mostly me being mistaken and learning about things and pointing out flaws that ended up not being flaws. But it was super gracious. So I was fascinated with Bitcoin and the technology, and I just absolutely hated the monetary policy.
Mm.
I thought Bitcoin is an amazing technology and a horrible, horrible money, right? I just didn't see that. So I was actually one of the first people in the forums talking about stablecoins. And if you go back in there, you'll see I hosted a whole bunch of threads of everybody's different ideas about what a stablecoin would be. And one of the classes of stablecoin was, we called it a pegged coin, which is something that like matches the US dollars or the euro or something. But to us, a stable coin was a purely crypto asset, something that didn't exist in the real world, that whose price remains stable. And the price would remain stable by adjusting the monetary supply, basically. Instead of saying this has to be every second of the day pegged against a dollar, we say, yeah, it's about a dollar. It'll converge on a dollar over time. So you can think about it as a dollar. And what mechanisms do we use to make it trend in that direction? And so anyway, I was fascinated with those early on.
Wow. You mentioned you had conversations and interactions with Satoshi. Do you believe it's one person or do you believe it's a group?
I seem like one person to me, but on the internet, you know, actually I've got the cartoon on my desktop. On the internet, nobody knows you're a dog, right? You remember that famous old cartoon? You know, everybody, it was Bitcoin text, is text in a window. And so the voice of those words is in your head. And so when I read the text, I read it as one person. He responded as one person, and I read it as somebody just like me, because that's my only frame of reference, right? I thought, I'm interested in this stuff. This person's interested in this stuff. He must be someone like me. So beyond that, I never spent much time thinking, Satoshi, is he Japanese? It didn't sound Japanese by writing. You know, there were none of the foreign idioms there. I remember it being just perfect English and perfect politeness. So yeah, I never suspected that. In the day, nobody said, oh, this is multiple people. He's a strange character. He was just a guy in a forum with a clever idea.
You know, there's some who think he's Hal Finney, or he or she. Well, it's hard to say who or what, but there's a theory that it could be Hal Finney. What do you think about that?
I really didn't know Hal well enough, right? I actually went in the forums and I tried to meet a lot of people, but I don't know if you've noticed this. Cryptocurrency people are a little bit cliquish,
Yeah.
right? Oh, you've noticed, right? So if you were a Bitcoin maximalist back in 2010, the last thing you wanted to hear was people talking about stablecoins, because you're essentially all in on your coin of choice. So, you know, the discussions bifurcated pretty quickly between the people that were Bitcoin maximalists and the people who were interested in cryptocurrency as a concept and all the different things you could do with it. You know, very quickly there was a group of people like, no, you can't change anything. This was handed down by God, and this is the way it shall always be. You know, and other people going, well, this is weird. This is like beta 1, right? We're not going to make any changes to this. And so that turned out to be how I end up finding Ripple.
And how did that connection, was it kind of in passing, like you heard about the company, or did someone maybe on the forum, maybe someone from Ripple was on the forum as well, who you connected with?
So really what happens is I would go in the Bitcoin Talk forums and carry on some deep discussions. I'm sort of known for that, to actually hear people and try to get to the core of these things and actually do really interesting, deep conversations. But then there was all this noise of people that didn't want to hear it, that would shout you down. So I would go in for 3 or 4 months and then be frustrated and leave and be gone for 8 months. And then I'd go back and see if anything changed. So in one of my trips to the Bitcoin Talk forum, there's a lot of people that were talking about enhancements you can make to Bitcoin. So at the time there was Bitcoin, the people who thought they got to Bitcoin too late, right? They weren't early. They started Litecoin, right? Because
Right.
they were just too late to Bitcoin, and that was really all it was. And then there's rationalization around why, but it was really they thought they were just too late, and everybody else got all the good Bitcoin. So in amidst that discussion, Litecoin changed the mining algorithm so they could do less than every 10 minutes. They could do more frequent things. And people started saying, well, what else could we modify on here? And a lot of people put up interesting ideas. One was called balance sheets, which was the idea that with Bitcoin, you have to download the entire blockchain because that's the whole data structure. You have to start from the beginning and go through everything to figure out the unspent transaction outputs to even make it valid. And somebody went, well, that's kind of redundant to have everybody in the world do that over and over again. What if we just every few minutes published a list of balances of what everybody had, and then you wouldn't have to download the whole blockchain. You would just say, we all agree this is the balances. Turns out, you ever heard that in XRPL? That's a feature they call the last closed ledger, or the last validated ledger. And so anyway, there was a whole list of features for Bitcoin that a couple of years back, I guess 2010, I went back and I was working on my own project, which I thought, you know what I need? I need a big ledger. I want to track money for a lot of people. And I said, I'm going to go back and see if anybody implemented any of those new ideas. I keep hearing about all these altcoins. Let's see if anybody implemented all these ideas we made a list of for Bitcoin. And of course, no one did. Every altcoin was a copy paste of Bitcoin or Litecoin at that time, except this weird project called Ripple that a lot of people seem to hate and a lot of people seem to find fascinating, but they were very confused about it. And so I started talking about Ripple in the Bitcoin forums. Woo, that doesn't make you popular fast. And so, but it was fascinating because Ripple had implemented every single one of those features that we had, postulated for Bitcoin, plus a whole bunch more we hadn't even thought of. And so I got super fascinated. And the thing I was fascinated about was Ripple, which is what we now call XRP Ledger. We used to just call Ripple then, could deal with dollars, regular fiat currency, in addition to XRP. And I think dollars actually make a pretty good money, right? It's for all those things you use money for, money I can pay you right this second, but money you also calculate in for your mortgage, right? If you bought a house and you have a 30-year mortgage, you're going to want to agree to those payments denominated in Bitcoin?
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
No, that would be bad, right? One day your payment is $200,000 and the next day it doesn't make any sense as for a lot of the use cases of money. It's a great commodity, just it's not a thing that you can use to pay people back money reasonably or to calculate future payments for things denominated in Bitcoin, because you just never know what they're going to be worth. So Ripple had all that built in. And so in there, this strange person took pity on me in the forums while I was discussing this. And he went by the handle Joel Katz. And he said, we have another forum over at ripple.com/forum where we just talk about Ripple. And so I thought, oh, experts. So I went there, and in a month, I went from a nobody in the forums to the #1 poster. I learned from a bunch of Canadians who came from Ryan Fugger's Ripple Pay system, and they came in early to Ripple. They knew everything about rippling transactions, learned from them, taught other people. And then 6 weeks after I discovered it, I just asked them for a job. So I was hired remotely, sight unseen, just based
Wow.
on what I did in the forum.
Wow. So you're an OG, man. You discovered Bitcoin so early, obviously, then over at Ripple in the early days. So if you don't mind me asking, are you primarily holding Bitcoin and XRP? I'm assuming you have some Bitcoin from back in the day. Do you
I
hold anything else?
So actually, back in the day, because it was such a combative forum, and at that moment in time, I was poor, like really poor. So this was after the dot-com crash, and I ended up with two houses, and between my wife and I, we had no jobs. And
Wow.
so when I discovered Bitcoin, I thought, you know, I would like to buy $100 worth of Bitcoin just because I think this is so cool. But to do that, you had to take $100 bill, put it in an envelope, and address it to somebody with an anonymous nick on the forum, right? Try to explain that to your wife,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
right? And so I'm like, that's not a fight I want to pick, right?
Yeah.
So when I found Bitcoin, they were five for their dollar.
Wow.
And so that would have been a good
Wow.
a good deal. Not sure when I would have sold them, but they five for a dollar was good. But you know what was one of the reasons I didn't? The week before, because remember, this was after the Slashdot article came out. Um, the week before, I think they were 200 to the dollar.
Wow.
And then, so the week I was there, they were suddenly five to the dollar. And so I'm talking to people on the forum and they go like, I go, is this a spike? Aren't I buying high? They're like, no, 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 no. And you had the arguments that people still make today. It's like we deserve this because we've been supporting Bitcoin for a long time. And then you go back and you look at somebody's history in the forum and you go like, you discovered this 2 weeks ago and you've made 6 posts in the forums. That's all you've done. And so, you want 200x, you want to rationalize that and tell me, no, it's all fine. So anyway, the arguments people were making for me to buy Bitcoin at that moment were awful. They were atrocious.
Hmm.
And I kept thinking, oh, this argument, the dollar's going to go to hell, the euro's going to go to hell, the whole economy is going to crash, and everybody's going to need our Bitcoin. I thought, this is the worst marketing campaign I've ever heard. How are you going to get 8 billion people to buy into that? And so it was just so abysmal that I didn't actually get in early in Bitcoin. I was in the community, I was watching it all, but I didn't actually commit to buying Bitcoin. So that's why I didn't get in Bitcoin. When I discovered Ripple, I was the only person who was not fascinated by XRP, right? Because, like I told you, I was fascinated in money. It's like, how do I make these two? How do I make these cross currency payments? How do I, all of these real world use cases? And I thought I can convince 800 or 8 billion people to use money, to use dollars and euros and Canadian dollars and yen and yuan. Like, they already understand that. And whether they use XRP in between, they don't even have to care about, right? It's just
Right.
we've made their money work better. And so I got so fascinated by that I just had to work with Ripple.
So on that note, and maybe we were expanding the conversation a bit here, and I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but because we're on this topic, do you see that stable coins and look CBDCs that are coming are going to be the transactional currencies, digital currencies versus digital assets and crypto like Bitcoin? So XRP as the neutral bridge asset, maybe web monetization and things like that because of its speed and low transaction fees. Bitcoin, digital gold, you buy it like you're holding traditional gold. And then you have your other digital assets. You have your proof of stake, smart contract tokens. But to your point, I'm not going to the grocery store to spend those. I'm using a stable coin. do you see the token economy, the digital economy operating that way?
I actually do a bit. Now, I'm super opinionated about the term stable coins and what a stable coin really is. But the stable coins we have now, like USD Tether, USDC, some of those other ones, they're perfectly valid in the definition of stable coin, but really they are just issued assets like you would have on the XRP ledger. Theoretically, behind every dollar of Tether is a US dollar somewhere held by someone who's committed to giving you that back. Now, you smile as if you don't believe it, and a lot of people don't believe it, but fundamentally, that's the same model as a bank has, right?
Right.
They don't actually hold every dollar behind the scenes either. They just promise to deliver it to when you need it, right? And that might mean they have to sell off loans to somebody else for cash to return your cash to you. But that's a process we just call banking, right? That's been done for hundreds, 1,000 years probably. And so to me, the stable coins that exist now, mainly Tether, USDC, only exist because the US banking system is filled with people that don't get it, right? If the banks were actually transacting on digital ledgers, then the banks could be the custodians for the money. They could continue to do banking and loaning it out instead of your account being tracked on their core banking system, which sits on their general ledger. It would just be tracked on the XRPL or any other blockchain that you wanted in USD. You wouldn't even have to put a Tether after it because it would be like on the Ripple ledger. It would be a USD held at Bank of America. That's a USD. You're in New Jersey, which is far, far away from me. But if you write me a check, I consider that USD, right? I don't consider that USD New Jersey because your money physically sits in a bank in New Jersey, probably. It's just US dollars. And so the fact that we have to call it Tether or a stable coin is just the result of the banking system being so far behind the curve and not understanding their proper role in this space.
So this goes into the larger situation of what we're dealing with from a macroeconomic standpoint with bank runs and collapses because of fractional reserve banking. You're saying that these stable coins are carrying over the same model. Yes, it's on the blockchain, but it's still some level of fractional reserve banking versus what you're saying running on a ledger real time, if I'm getting that right.
Well, I mean, the ledger just tracks what balances you have. If you look how you would set it up on the XRP ledger, you would have an issuing address that represents the bank. You would have an asset account that represents how much money I physically have in the vault or the Federal Reserve for these people. And then I would have the liability accounts from the bank's perspective to all of my customers. And when the customers send money, it just debits one account and credits the other account on the ledger. It just moves around. And the fiat just sits nicely in the bank vault. Well, if it sits in the bank vault for 10 years because people are just passing this money around, then people look at this and you go, well, does it really need to be in the bank vault? I mean, we never touch it, right? So it's nice knowing it's in the bank vault, but it really doesn't change anything for our day-to-day life because we never go in that bank vault. And so that's what's happening with Tether. The people and USDC and some of the other ones, they go like, yeah, we are backed 1-to-1, but our money is not in paper notes in a vault. It's in US Treasury bills. He's like, is that the same? Well, kind of. It's in money market accounts. Is it really the same, or is that just some kind of banking that they're doing? And to me, as long as they make good on their claims, that's perfectly fine money, because money is only something that has value between and among people, right? You remove the people, it's just a pointless pile of paper.
So on that note, Bob, and I know I'm getting really deep into this aspect, but the conversation's going that way. Is there a missing layer to that verification? Because I think in having this discussion with you, what's the difference between JP Morgan saying I have X amount of dollars in this account in this vault versus Tether saying that yes, I see the respective tokens on the blockchain, but I don't know if they actually have the reserves. Mm-hmm. Does the blockchain need to go into that vault, so to speak, and they need to put the reserves data on the blockchain for verifiability? And this goes for Circle as well, because I don't know what Circle has in their vault, so to speak.
It would be trivial to do, on the XRP Ledger, because it has the double entry accounting facilities for doing that. You can track not only your liabilities, but you can track where your assets are. And then they connect into this global network where they can all move around. So I don't know, I had to teach how banking works to a lot of people. And the least receptive learners were actually a lot of the crypto people. But even among the bankers, people weren't even really sure how banking works. But fundamentally, when you deposit these paper notes into the bank, they go in one of two places. They either sit in the vault at the bank, or if they decide they have enough of these, they transfer them by armored car to the Federal Reserve, and they get credited on their master account with the Federal Reserve. And that's how the banks hold their cash. It's either physically paper in vault, or it's this credit with the Federal Reserve. But then most of their assets, they loan out to other people, right?
Right.
But, like if I deposit my money in the bank, that's the bank's liability to me, but it's my asset from them in that way. When the bank loans their money out, they literally took the money out of the vault and handed it to somebody else. So their asset is now in a different location. It's at a company, or it's at Alice's, with Alice on her line of credit, or it's in Alice's house. That's where their asset is. It just changed form. But people get fascinated that it's no longer paper notes anymore. But they can resell Alice's mortgage to somebody else in exchange for paper notes.
Right.
That's just how the banking system works. And so generally it works well, except when people panic, right? Which happened with Silicon Valley Bank. A lot of people went, oh, I lost faith, rush in, take it all out now. And so the numbers I read was the amount of money they needed to cover was actually fairly small, and they were well on their way to trading around assets and selling off stuff to cover all of their needs, when the bank run caused panic and caused everybody to pull the money out and caused them to have a much bigger gap in what they needed to do, basically. So, people are, like they said in Men in Black, individually people are smart, but in groups people are panicky. And so nothing changes when you move it into the crypto world. Nothing changes with Tether. They have the money, I'll trust them, right? I'm not even going to be skeptical that they have no money backing this. They might not, but I'm not even going to be skeptical there. But it's not all in one bank, because if it was all in one bank, they would be worried that somebody would freeze their bank account and it would wreck the thing. So their money is likely in the hands of different rich people or different business owners or different other people who keep a lot of cash or keep a lot of cash in their accounts, who promise to give it back. I don't even know how people audit them. But when you look at that, it becomes indistinguishable from banking to me.
For sure. And we saw some of the reserve issues, not specifically with the stable coins, but with the exchanges. And, I think after all the collapses we saw last year, a lot of exchanges started coming out with proof of reserves, Merkle tree audits, which, you look back, hindsight's 2020, you're like, why weren't these things in place? But I guess you live and you learn.
But you want to know, where's the money in your bank account? Which banks are you using? What do they think about this? What's likely that they shut your account or freeze your funds? Because no Merkle tree proof is going to save you from that. But really, fundamentally, stablecoins exist because there are different. Now let's forget about the decentralized exchanges. There are different centralized exchanges around, and it was very easy to move Bitcoin from one centralized exchange to another centralized exchange. But let's say you have a bunch of people buying Bitcoin in dollars at one exchange and selling Bitcoin for dollars at another exchange. Well, that skews the prices at the different exchanges. And it becomes hard to arbitrage because literally all the dollars are at one exchange and they've been withdrawn from the other exchange. And the banking system was making it hard to physically transfer, to wire the dollars from one exchange to the other, because that has to go through the US Federal Reserve, and they ask for a lot of know your customer and who's doing this and why. And that became a bother for people to get USD bank accounts. So Tether was the answer to that. They're like, okay, we need something that we can send from one exchange to the other exchange easily that's pegged to $1. So we'll make something up out of thin air and we'll back it by dollars somewhere, maybe, hopefully, but that's what they need. They need something that can move from exchange to exchange that looks and feels like $1. So I got vetted really early for Tether. I sent them all my KYC information so I could withdraw through Tether, and I don't even know if anybody does that now. But somewhere I'm on their list.
So, we have CBDCs that are coming, some of which are being, piloted and tested on the XRP Ledger. It seems every central bank is looking to get these up and running. How do you think the digital economy, the token economy, exists with both of these? Do you see CBDCs in the wild, or is it on a higher level between banks and the government? And maybe some of these stable coins are more on the retail level. I don't know. It may be very early to answer that question. How do you see them coexisting?
I have super strong opinions about this. And it's mostly because so few people understand money as a concept. People understand money of I want to have more because that makes me rich and powerful. But they really don't understand much about what it is, the thing itself. And so money is for one thing. It was invented for one and only one reason, and that's to facilitate trade between humans, between and among humans, right? That's the only thing that it's its unique capability. But what we've done over the years is a lot of people that I'll just call them well-intentioned, right? For a lot of well-intentioned reasons, they've decided money should do a lot of other stuff too. Money should be a policeman. It should fight crime, right? So now the bankers whose job is to not lose money and, make good lending things, are now tasked with policing for crime and policing for money laundering and policing for all of these other things. And, with this wealth of know your customer laws and other sort of things. But, that's just a weird capability, but it's been so socially programmed into people that we think that's normal, right? We think bankers should be policemen. You're like, oh, well, now this war happened with Ukraine and Russia. And, no matter which side you stand on of the war, my point is the US made this crazy decision, along with Europe, to say, well, we want these Russia people out of the banking system. We don't want them to be able to use our money. So now money is foreign policy. It's actually trying to do things there. And so if you look at money, the thing itself, and maybe I have something like this. It's a money, right? When was the last time you saw this policing people?
Yeah.
This managing, our foreign relations. No, it facilitates trade. That's all it does.
Right.
And normally I have some other stuff laying around, but say there's a lot of things that are denominated in dollars, and you're familiar with, say, Burger King, right? And they often send out coupons. So say I had a $5 Burger King coupon and a $5 bill, and I owed you $5 and I needed to pay you. Which one would you want me to give you? They're both $5, right? But what's your choice?
I guess sorry, you said the
$5 Burger King coupon or a $5 U.S. Federal Reserve note?
Well, I guess it depends on which one if there's additional, well, if they're both equally going to get me the same thing, I guess the $5 Burger King.
Yeah. You would take the $5 Burger King? You're the first one who's ever said that.
Well, if my intention was I wanted to get Burger King, but if I was going to get if I wasn't, Burger King wasn't necessarily my favorite restaurant, I'll take the other.
Yeah. And so usually people take the note, the Federal Reserve note, because the number of humans you can trade that to for something else is a much broader number. You can only trade the $5 Burger King coupon to a Burger King restaurant, right? And so even though they're denominated in worth the same amount of money, logically, in goods, the dollar's worth more to you because it has the flexibility of a bigger circle, right?
Right.
And so when the US cuts Russia out of use of the dollar, it makes the dollar less valuable, right? The ways I can use the dollar are now fewer. And, the more people you cut out of using this, circle of dollar users, the more you make a competing currency more valuable in the sense that it has a bigger group. So if I cut criminals out of the group of people that can use dollars, now if somebody comes up with USD Tether that works for law-abiding people and for criminals, well, it's a more valuable dollar for dollar, right? There's more people you can trade it to. And you've got to, the old economist used to say, bad money drives out good money. But in this case, the money that is useful for more people is going to drive out the money that's useful for smaller cliques of people. I mean, you really got to work hard to fight that. And so, but what I see is that's just a trend of all governments, right? So governments want to use their fiat currencies for things that are not facilitating trade. And every time they do that, they make their particular currency less valuable, not more valuable. And it's hard for people to grasp that. But in the crypto circles, that's the draw of cryptocurrencies. There's a bunch of people going, quit using my money for stuff that money is not for, right? My Bitcoin isn't for policing people. My business, it's for facilitating me trading with people. It's not for tracking me. It's not for making sure I'm, not violating vice laws. It's not, it's not there to police me. And so the more countries do that, and even with, socially acceptable things with taxes. We want to redistribute money from these people to these people. Well, eventually that starts to annoy people.
Yep.
And they go looking for a different money, right? A different way to store their value. And so I think that's where cryptocurrencies come in. I really think stable coins or real life stable fiat will always be what we use to price goods and services because they're just much better for that. I can look at this thing and say, this is worth $5 and this is worth $10. And I can really see that the thing that they're charging $10 isn't worth it to me compared to the $5 one. And I can see that, next week, if I go to the grocery store and the prices are up 20%, that's a bad thing, right? Something's gone out of whack. People are really good at judging that. When the cryptocurrency prices are all over the place and they're running up and down and the numbers are changing, basically everything you buy in Bitcoin has to be priced in fiat. And
Right.
it's, I want this much fiat equivalent of Bitcoin. And you go, okay, well, that's not money. That's a commodity. If I told you, I want you to pay me $1,000 worth of gold, you wouldn't start calling gold the money, right? It's still the commodity. So anyway, that's where I stand on this. I think together they make a really good money system where people with one fiat currency, with one set of restrictions, can trade through a cryptocurrency into another fiat currency for payments. And that's really what XRPL did better than any other system, probably still now, but at least, undisputably for most of a decade.
And you were at Ripple for a good amount of time. Then you left. Are you still bullish on XRP and the vision that the folks at Ripple have for the XRPL?
I am super bullish. And you asked me about my crypto holdings. I exclusively hold XRP. Way, way too much to be well balanced in my, as a 60-year-old man who should have a more balanced financial portfolio. It's way skewed to XRP and Ripple stock, right? So I've got, all of my eggs in one particular basket. And yeah, I'm still bullish on it because they're right. I mean, there is room to fix the banking system. There is a room to make money work much better. They've had a huge head start on this. And a lot of people in the banking world think of them as the good guys. Why the SEC thinks of them as the bad guys is just baffling, because we worked with the Federal Reserve. We worked with all the big banks. We worked with every regulator we could find, trying to be the good guys. And suddenly this craziness happens. So I'm still bullish because I think in the long run, they have the best solution. You've just got to be, the banks aren't going to go away, even with, central bank distributed or decentralized currencies, whatever we're calling them now. CBDCs. What's the D? Are we calling it?
Central bank digital currencies.
Digital currencies. Okay, we'll give it that one. But yeah, it's funny because people don't understand what that means. To me, that means a master account with the Federal Reserve, because that's the central bank's digital currency. That's their ledger, is the master accounts that banks hold, that the Federal Reserve tracks their money. And what we're saying now is regular citizens should be able to have those master accounts with the Federal Reserve. Is that a good idea? I doubt it. Yeah. What about foreign citizens holding those accounts? Is that a good idea? I doubt it. Like, from my point of view, it's a great idea. From the government and what the government wants to use money to do, it's probably a really bad idea. And that holds true for almost all countries.
Yeah, and it seems like all of them are working towards building their own CBDCs. You mentioned the SEC lawsuit. Um, I don't want to get conspiratorial, but is it a
Go
bit?
nuts.
But is it a bit? And I think it's not far fetched to say that this new disruptive technology, and especially what Ripple is doing in disrupting banking and payments. I mean, we're talking about money and the fabric of society and trade and so forth. Is it the SEC weaponized a bit by maybe incumbents, the banking incumbents who are like, nope, we're not going to let this startup come and take our business away. We're making bank, with the SWIFT system and movement of money. Is it a bit of that? And we had guys like Tim Draper and so forth talk about that. We're in the fight you phase.
It could be. My gut always goes to incompetence more than it goes to like malice, because there's just a lot more dumb people than there are people who are that clever to pull some of this off. But it's hard to know, because it does. So the one thing I learned about banking, from talking to real live bankers, is it's a great job, right? It pays well. It's not that hard. There's no heavy lifting. You're not out in the sun sweating all day long. The number one goal of bankers is don't get fired, right? And you don't get fired by, you show you made a little money here, all your customers' assets are protected. Nobody, your profits are up a little bit and everybody skates on. That's really what most people want. And when they see opportunities, they want it to be super solid. They want, like, I want to make sure that this thing doesn't cost me any money, because then I might get fired. But if it makes me money, I might get promoted, and that's even better. But when you get to the top levels, it's really hard to know. People look at this and it can be super disrupting. I've told this story before, but at the Bitcoin conference in Amsterdam, I don't know, 2014, I was there pitching Ripple, teaching people about it. And a guy named Wim came up, and then he brought a guy named Godfried. And they spent 3 hours listening to me explain how Ripple worked and the benefits of this for moving money. And little did I know, they were the head of Swift, like literally the CEO. I'm used to talking to people at organizations, and they're always middle management, right? The CEO does not walk up to you on the floor of a conference. The CEO has somebody call and arrange a private meeting, right?
Right.
And so that I wasn't expecting. But immediately after that, they saw it as a threat. They were like, uh-oh, this is actually a big time threat. And they got to work. And they spread a lot of FUD. They actually did a lot of good things. They improved their systems. But, it's not beyond the pale. It's not super crazy to think that there's a lot of people that are threatened by what Ripple is trying to do in the systems. And likewise, they're threatened by what cryptocurrencies are trying to do.
Sure.
But then you have to cut some of them a little slack, because some of them are there to prevent crime and to prevent fraud. And there's a lot of people committing crime and defrauding people in the crypto space, right?
Yeah.
FTX, that was no small deal there.
Yeah.
And so, do I hate regulators who go after companies like FTX? Wish they would have gone after a little sooner. That would have been
well, Bob,
great.
I mean, that's been a big debate, because I've spoken to like Congressman Tom Emmer and so forth, who've said, hey, Chair Gensler, where was your Wells notice for FTX, Celsius? Why didn't you stop Terra Luna? What happened to Voyager? and so on and so forth. But Kim Kardashian, Ripple, really,
It's
right?
ridiculous, right? Kim Kardashian. That's the big fish
Right.
because that'll get us press on Instagram and Twitter. Uh,
So you see this dichotomy, and it's like, well, that something's not right there. It just it doesn't smell right. So to your point, we want the regulators to do their job. Police, yes, stop the bad actors, but don't stifle and kill innovation, which seems to be what's happening in the United States right now.
it does.
So, what are your thoughts? What is your gut feeling on crypto regulations? That is it when the industry starts to fight back? We're seeing Coinbase sue the SEC, Grayscale suing the SEC, Ripple's of course fighting back. That once the SEC starts taking some losses and there's the lawsuits are piling up against them, that maybe Congress will act.
It's crazy. Congress will only act when their citizens act up,
Hmm.
right? You just have to write your Congress people and threaten not to vote for them anymore. And then suddenly it's an important issue to them if they think they're going to lose their job. But all of these other lawsuits, the solution to the problem, and keep in mind, I am a crypto anarchist libertarian type. I discovered Bitcoin in 2010. Um, I'm not a socialist, right? I really don't think the problem is we need to have more citizens all gather together and organize and petition our Congress to all tell everybody what to do better, right? It's
Hmm.
like that never really solves the problem. What solves the problem is a bunch of people going like, you know, this money sucks. I'm moving all my value into this money. And, this money is overregulated and this money can't be regulated. I'm moving into Zcash or one of these other anonymous things. Why? Because I don't think you should be tracking me. That's just it. Do I want to do bad things? No, but I don't think you should be tracking me for any definition of you, whether you're the government, whether you're advertisers, whether you're, salespeople, other people trying to manipulate my world. I don't think you should be tracking me. And people track you by your money. So if you go, I'm just going to move to an anonymous kind of money, that's why. And when people do that, things change, right? But people getting angry and forming small groups to be more effectively loud in their anger really isn't a substitute for just doing something different. So,
And on that note, adoption takes time. You got the S curve model and so
yeah.
forth. What do you think might be the next big catalyst? And maybe we're going through it right now with these bank runs and people are seeing what's happening that will have more people go into crypto. To your point of, I don't trust this old guard money anymore. I'm going to Bitcoin or XRP, something, right? What do you think might be the catalyst there? And this is a hard question because we don't know the future. Nobody has a crystal ball. But is it like these bank runs that are happening in inflation as well?
Well, this is super funny because I was just writing this down today. So, can I do this whole big transition to xSpectar, right?
Mm. Oh, yeah.
And so before I do that, what do you use your money for? Like, I brought the money out. It's like little paper money. What do you use your paper money for?
Uh, Buying goods and services.
Where? In
Um,
the real world,
in the
right?
real world, yeah.
It's a paper money that belongs in the real world. You buy goods and services in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
And perfectly apropos for that, right? It's a great technology for doing it. Keep in mind, it's not anonymous, right? You have your money, you're staring into the face of the cashier.
Yep.
You could not be less anonymous, right? It's just more private. The cashier doesn't write down, oh, gave me this particular bill here. I wonder where that bill's been before. He doesn't care. That settles the transaction. He gave you whatever beer, you gave them the money, you guys are done, you can part your ways. That's what settlement means in the financial system.
Mm-hmm.
And so the problem with bootstrapping the digital currency is right now people are used to buying physical things, right? And so if you want to use your digital currency at the convenience store, well, then they have to accept cryptocurrency.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't have to accept just cryptocurrency. They have to accept the particular cryptocurrency that you hold,
Right.
because otherwise you can't send it to them. And with the explosion of different cryptocurrencies, that's just an untenable position, right? Even the credit card companies have figured that out, where you can have one merchant acquirer that can accept MasterCard and Visa, keeping in mind those are two different companies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even though the scammers that send me email don't seem to know that they're two companies. They send me scams saying, oh, this is the help desk at MasterCard and Visa and your accountant. I'm like, no, you don't even understand. But MasterCard, Visa, American Express, Diners Club, they can all go through the same merchant acquirer. But that doesn't handle necessarily the Chinese cards, the Japanese cards, the Indian cards, any other cards, right? It's just the limited area that we use here. And when you put 200, 1,000 crypto tokens on there, it's silly, right? That's just not money. It may
Right.
be assets, it may be commodities, may have utility for things like Filecoin claims to have for storing files, but for making payments to the guy, at the convenience store on the corner, he wants to receive US dollars. Just face it. And so what it got me thinking is, what are really fast digital payments good for, right? If I can get you the money anywhere in the world in 3 seconds or 5 seconds, like you can with the XRPL, I want my shit back in 5 seconds, right? And they go, I got you the money in 5 seconds. You go, good, it'll be there in 2 weeks. It's got to ship on a slow boat from China.
Right.
That's not a radical improvement in anything, is it? And so it's hard for people to just get super excited about that. So anyway, that brings us back to digital property. And when I went to work for Chris very early on, like 2013 with Ripple, I was telling him, we need to focus on payments for digital property, for music and movies and other things that can arrive right away, right?
Right.
It wasn't clear what those were going to be, but like, we have really fast money, we need really fast goods. And, so slowly that's happening. All the money goes to Amazon first, but, Bank of Amazon, really. But that never really left my head that that's what we need to bootstrap cryptocurrency. Is we need faster goods, digital goods that can move at the speed of cryptocurrency. And so when I stumbled into this idea of the metaverse, I'm like super skeptical, right? Because I've had headsets on since, 88. They've given me headaches. They've done this. I'm not a super gamer, but I started to realize that two important things happen that old people miss, right? But the thing about being old is you get to look back and you realize where you screwed up, and you go, let's try not to screw that up anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So where I screwed up was YouTube. And I think it was Instagram too. Is Instagram the one that for 5 years, everybody was just taking pictures of their breakfast and the
Yeah, it was all food.
yeah, it's like, here's what I'm having for breakfast. Why do you want to know? I don't know, right?
Yeah.
And YouTube at the beginning, it's like people's travel videos and stuff. I'm like, I don't want to watch your camcorder videos now. Why do I want to watch them when I'm not even at your house? But what I missed was very creative people are going to see that as a platform. They're going to see Instagram. It's just a platform where I can put pictures on there. Right. And I can make up my own theme on these pictures. And my theme of these pictures are, don't I look great when I look rich? Right? And they could draw their own audience and create their own value. That went over my head. Like, I didn't look at Instagram and see, oh, that's going to be people turning that into a valuable service where other people throw money at them for saying nice things about products. Likewise, I didn't see YouTube as a platform where people were going to show up and you go, I'm Linus and I can review tech products on YouTube. And a few years later, I can have 100 employees working for me in giant warehouses reviewing every technical thing here. Right? I could be this educator teaching you physics here. I could be somebody, talking about the history of home theater products. This is fascinating. People took a boring platform, which was just a place to host videos, and they themed it and they created their own audiences and they found value and had people send you money. So when I look at the metaverse, I'm like, I don't know what people are going to do in it. But then I go like, ding, other people are going to look at that and go, I can totally do this. I can't even tell you this now because I know they will find it. I know they will do something. And
it's a maturation of what you were talking about, is social media and these platforms where content creators can go on. It's just the next layer, the next level.
And what's the number one feature that these people are going to want? Whoever these creative people are that figure out what to do with this virtual reality or 3D modeled environment, what's the number one feature they're going to want in the platform?
The ability to connect with people in a way. The part of what creates social media and these content platforms is having followings, to be able to build a community, and this takes it to the next level.
What do they want more?
Sorry, what was that?
What do they want more than that?
Value, money.
They want to get paid.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They want to make that their day job. They want to get paid.
Yeah.
So YouTube, was it a platform built in with money for people to get paid? Oh, hell no. YouTube pays people as little money as they can because YouTube is a platform for YouTube to make money. Instagram, platform for influencers to get paid? Oh, hell no. It's a platform for you to be an influencer and figure out your own way to get paid. That's the flaw. So when I looked at this, I thought, oh, people are going to come to this. They're going to figure out how to create value. I don't know exactly what that value is, but value by definition is between and among people, like money. If I create value for you, you receive the value. And if you choose, you can trade me money in exchange for the value. But that's the human dynamic, is I want you to be rewarded for producing this value. I think this is worth it. It's worth this much money, and here you go. And if we build that into the platform, then it's an enabling technology for everybody, right? Because there's a thing I said, I don't know. I should say it like this on your channel because it seems like a very wholesome channel. But nobody wants a shit job in the metaverse, right? That's like nobody's dream. It was I'm going to wash dishes in the metaverse and I'm going to take home minimum wage and go here.
Right.
Like, no, you want to be an entertainer. You want to be a creator. You want to be famous. You want to do something, and you can be. A lot of people are going to come to the metaverse trying to be entertained, trying to see the next thing, trying to learn something. And those are people that are working a day job and making money. And like you walk, if you make money your day job and you walk around New Jersey, you don't go into a store and go, I'm gonna take this loaf of bread, but don't worry, advertisers will pay. You're like, no, store owners having none of that.
Right.
He's giving you value, you pay for the value. Somehow that got crazy with today's internet, and we thought, you don't have to pay for anything. Advertisers will track you and manipulate you and convince you to give you their money in a different way. And in the meantime, they'll just pay these other people off because it's more profitable for them to pay them a little and take a lot of money from you. And it's a super absurd concept, the internet we have today. So I thought, as we get into the metaverse, let's bring the money in. So everything in the metaverse is a digital good or a digital service. So it travels at the speed of digital payments, right? And we are building the metaverse on top of the XRP Ledger. Because why? Well, what does the internet miss? What was the flaw in the World Wide Web? One, no payments. And I've told this to people, maybe I tell this story too much, but you know what error message 404 is, right?
Yeah.
File not found.
Right.
What's 402?
Yeah, I don't know what 402 is.
402 is payment required. You can't get to this site because a payment is required. How do you make a payment? Well, they actually never standardized that. They realized we want to be paid before they ever figured out how people are supposed to pay you. And that became the fundamental flaw of the internet that led to all of this tracking, all of this advertising supported thing, all of this monetization of user base, all of that mess came because nobody implemented how to get paid. And so nobody could use the payment required error code. So basically, we're starting from scratch and saying, okay, we need to do that. Now, if we're going to do that, then people have to have money. Well, XRP is a great way for people to have money. But beyond that, if you don't want to be tracked on the internet, what about your identity? What do we need to do with identity? Now, there's a lot of people in the crypto space that are saying we should have a self-sovereign identity that you issue and you can use everywhere you go, right? That just means people can track everything you do because you give them a unique identifier for you, no matter where you go, whether it's vice or whether it's virtue, whether you're going to church or, whether you're going to a strip club. It's you. It's the same identity and people are tracking it and they're following your money. It's a really catastrophically bad idea. When you think about it that way, if you're in the crypto space and you're at all libertarian, you probably don't think people should be tracking everything you do. And yet the same people go, self-sovereign ID, let's allow people to track and then they try to back off of it. So the answer is, well, multiple IDs, right?
Yeah.
I have an ID I use for
public,
vice.
private. Yeah.
I have an ID I use for this. I have, a different identity that I use, and doesn't have to match your real world identity. But this is the subversive part, right? This is where people's heads start to turn and they start to get uncomfortable. What if you have multiple identities and each one can create value because you are among other people, right? So you're creating value for other people. You're just using an alternative identity for yourself. Well, if you're creating value for other people, shouldn't they be able to pay you for the value you create? But you're not a real world identity. So how could they pay you? And that seems upsetting to people, right? And I maintain that shouldn't be upsetting. If I produce value for somebody and they pay me, I should be able to receive that. They don't have an entitlement to know my real world name and address and how many kids I have and where I graduated and, you know, what my nationality is and what my family hit. They don't have any right to any of that information. They gave me a particular good, I gave them money, or I gave them a particular service and they gave me money. And then we're settled and done. So I maintain in the future that's better than today, that every person will have multiple identities because people already do, but their identities will be able to send and receive money without being correlated together. And
that
I also
absolutely makes sense.
I promise it will freak out a lot of people. And most of those people work for the government, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
they're like, no, we can't figure out what you're doing if you're suddenly, you know, let's say everybody had 3 different identities. So now there's 1 billion identities in the US. Well, that's a mind blower, right? It's like we went from, you know, 350 million people to 1 billion, not really people, but 1 billion identities that everybody's tracking that all have money in different ways. But it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
You produce value here, you should be able to receive money, and nobody's entitled to all of that. So bringing it back to xSpectar and the metaverse, that's just supernatural in the metaverse. As weird as that seems in the real world, is as natural as that seems in the metaverse. Do you play any games out on the magical internet?
Not anymore because my 5-year-old takes a lot of my time.
Well, yeah. But when you played, did you play them in your real name and real occupation?
Oh no, not at all.
Yeah. It's like, who wants to be a plumber? You know, you want to be a secret agent, or you want to be a, you know, a mercenary, or you want to, whatever games you play, that's who you want to be. So in the metaverse, you can be any of those things, but still receive money as well as pay money. Everybody's comfortable with, you can be in a fake identity and pay other people, because you realize how everybody's always super comfortable with you paying for everything. And they're less comfortable with you getting paid from people. It's super odd to me. I don't understand how people can be so like that. You know, like I'm happy if you're paying for everything, but I'm suspicious if you're receiving money from a lot of strange places. Like, weren't suspicious when I was giving money to a lot of strange places. How do you think they receive? You know, it's this weird asymmetry in this. And so what I'm trying to bring to the metaverse is I'm trying to empower you personally and say, you want to go there, you want to have multiple identities because you want to explore, knock yourself out.
So xSpectar, built on the XRP Ledger, metaverse driven. Are there any other aspects to it? I know there's like a token. Are there projects that can build within the xSpectar metaverse? Tell us a bit about that.
So it's really the xSpectar is in 2 layers, and then I'm going to complicate it. So think of it as the metaverse layer and the XRPL. So the metaverse is everything you see on your screen, the rendering of the 3D environments, all of the controls that you use to move around the environment and to go to these different virtual spaces. And it's not a single player experience like most of the internet. It's a multiplayer experience. That's the real thing. So the metaverse is about humans interacting with one another. It's not about arbitrary made up quests that you go by yourself to fight an imaginary dragon. You know, we can do that. That's done. That's a game. Pay $60 and download it on Steam.
Yeah.
You know, I don't need to build that. I need a way to better interact with you. Like here, we're kind of metaversey. We are in this same virtual space at the same time, having a dynamic conversation, which is awesome, by the way. Thank you for having me again. But what we can't do is go like, oh, bro, we have to go to this little cafe down the street. I got it. Let's just go, right? Suddenly the metaphor breaks and you can't go because it's in Texas and you're in New Jersey here. But if we were in the metaverse, we could just go, thanks for the interview. Let's go over here and, hear these musicians. And we could just get up and we could go and we would be there. And when you think about that, you go, oh, that's different. And different might actually turn out to be interesting and cool. It's not clear, but if we do that right, it could be something.
As you're saying that, I'm just thinking maybe in 10 years from now, let's say if you and I were doing this interview in the metaverse, we could literally be walking around in a different environment or landscape and having this conversation as though if I met you on the street or something and we went to, like you said, to a coffee shop and walking down the block having a conversation. It could be much more immersive and free and have more dynamic versus Bob's here, Tony's here, and just sitting talking.
Yeah, and we could ask people on the street what they think about things. It would be, more dynamic. And so to make that function, we're building it on the XRPL. And you think, whoa, why would that be? And the XRPL provides three bits of functionality. It provides identity, and you can think of that as XRPL addresses for you. It provides money in whatever that you want to have. Could be XRP, could be USD, could be euros, could be xSpectar tokens, because the XRPL handles money. And it handles ownership, which is, NFTs here, which is the world's dumbest content or free name, right? It means a non-fungible thing that nobody uses anymore. Like, when's the last time you actually used a token, like a little metal disc? New York had them for subways and stuff, but I don't even think they use those anymore. But NFTs, it's digital property in our world, and you want to own it, and you sense that you want to own it like it might be a piece of land in xSpectar, or it might be a building that you put on your land, or an interior, or it might be a furniture or a skin or a piece of gear that you use during the game. These are all just digital properties that you can own, and you can buy them fast. The digital money moves fast, and you get the property fast, immediately in a sense. And it's all tracked on the XRP Ledger. So why? Well, one, because xSpectar, the company, me, Dirk here, don't have our fingers in that pie. That's your stuff. If we crash the company and fail to turn a profit at this and we all go away, with the design that I'm using, the metaverse still continues, the people still continue, the money still continues, the goods still continue, even if we fail completely, because it's built like the World Wide Web. It's a lot of independent operators creating virtual spaces that are glued together by identity and money and ownership of things. And so xSpectar is one of those participants that we're creating digital goods and selling them to people. Other people will be creating digital goods. Other people will have digital services. It might be musicians with concerts or artists painting pictures or, ticketed things. There's a lot of people coming to me with really great ideas, but they're all productive people wanting to create value in this metaverse. And in a lot of cases, they want to trade that for money. And so to me, it's just another way to look at all of these ideas that come from the cryptocurrency space. The ideas of having multiple identities personally and being paid in each identity separately and not being tracked. That's really, it seems novel when you think about it in the real world, right? It seems perfectly sensible in the metaverse, right?
Right.
Now, how far does that seem to you from Zcash or one of these other anonymous cash things?
You mean with this the multiple identities, right? One maybe public, one private.
Yeah. Well, Zcash is just like everything should be private, right?
Right. Yeah.
You don't even, it's like you have an infinite number of identities when you're using that. But the ideas are the same. Don't track me for this.
Right.
But socially, it's even a little better being less anonymous. So you might have a separate identity that you use. And I don't mean it sounds all serious in here. Like actors have stage names and then they have real world names, right? This is the name I work in. Musicians have that. I'm my musician stage name because they don't want a bunch of creepy people following them around. It's fine like that. So you have different names in here, but you might want to be semi-famous in one of those identities, and you don't want that fame in another identity, right? Like people seem to think I'm semi-famous in the crypto space, or at least the XRP space. But when I'm walking around my neighborhood, nobody thinks I'm special at all. And it's really awesome, right? We just have normal people conversations. I don't have to talk about cryptocurrency.
I could relate to that, having the podcast. Yeah, I want to walk on my door, not just be like anybody else, and not yeah.
And so when I walk out my door, I'm not famous at all. I'm the guy who needs to wash his boat. So guy with stuff laying around the yard. It's just that's what I want my regular life to be. So anyway, that's kind of how it fits together.
So I love the idea, and I haven't personally checked out xSpectar myself, and I know the question is going to come from people who are looking from the outside. They're seeing Zuck try his hand at the metaverse, losing a lot of money, and of course that does not encompass the entire industry, but that's what they see, and they're getting a lot of pushback from the incumbents and people who are get off my lawn, this metaverse stuff, right? And maybe
dumb.
Yeah, but we're also like in the dial-up days of the metaverse, so to speak, right? If you were to look back at the internet in the early 90s. So how does xSpectar differentiate itself and take it to the next level where people are like, oh, you know what? Okay, I get it now. Versus Zuckerberg lost $4 billion in the metaverse and I don't like it.
It's super interesting to think about, because that's where I was coming from. And it's like, why do people come and why do they stick around? And so I just turned around and looked backwards at this, to use the previous examples, because quite frankly now, and I don't want to offend anybody, we have a huge community that is believers in this, that are early adopters, which meant they bought stuff from us, basically, right? Some of them bought tokens, some of them bought land, some of them bought NFTs, because they really want to see this project a success. And they are super awesome people. I'm going to see a bunch of them in Vegas tomorrow and through the weekend. And so awesome people. But we can't build the metaverse with only those people.
Right.
And so I just got done writing a paper saying, it's like, what are my goals for the metaverse? So my goals for the xSpectar metaverse are to bring 1 billion people into the environment and to introduce them to self-empowering themselves over their money by using cryptocurrency. Right? I want people to come here and realize, oh, I could earn money if I want to earn money, or I could send money to my friends, or I could participate in these projects, or I could do all of these things that I might not be able to do in the real world. And 1 billion people sounds really big, right? If you compare that to the crypto space, it's like orders of magnitude bigger. If I convince every crypto fan to come into the metaverse, we couldn't get anywhere near 1 billion people, right? It just it's insignificant.
Right.
But it's only 20% of web users. Can you believe that?
Mm.
There's 5 billion people using the internet on the planet right now. Basically using most of them on Facebook.
Yeah. Or YouTube. Yeah.
But there's 5 billion of them. And so it's like, how do I get them in? Well, why do you go to YouTube?
Oh, are you asking a
I am
hypothetical?
asking you,
Okay.
tell me why you go, right?
Sure. The reasons I would say educational. I want to learn how to do something. Like I play guitar, so I want to learn this riff or whatever. I want to learn how to fix something in my house that just went whatever haywire. And then entertainment. I want to go maybe watch Mr. Beast do something crazy and be entertained for a bit.
Well, like Larry and Sergey, who used to own all of this Google empire, and I forget whoever's in charge now, they don't do any of that shit that you like, right?
No,
Who do you go to learn from?
the actual creators.
The actual creators. They're just, before they were on YouTube, they were just random schmoes on the street with a skill, right? And so when you come to the metaverse, it's going to be because 6 months before you came to the metaverse, some random schmoes went, oh, I could do this totally awesome thing. I could teach guitar lessons in the metaverse and it would be way better because of this. And you're going to go, oh, wow, I want to learn guitar. I want to see that. Somebody's going to say, here, I can teach you how to better fix car engines here by modeling this and showing you how this all, people are going to be thinking of interesting things, and they are going to be the ones that drive a billion people to have these experiences. And those people are going to be inspired, and then they're going to say, oh, I could totally do this in here. I don't have to, maybe I can be done with my real world shit job, right? And I could become a metaverse influencer or whatever is the analogy. I don't think anything will carry one for one. But there will be something analogous to that, right? There will be something analogous to what you are doing here. You're talking to people here about cryptocurrency there, which is just this sub-economy of the current real world.
Right.
But in the metaverse, there's lots of sub-economies of people trying to do things that, you could have a perfectly good show introducing people to, oh, here's all of these new business ideas and how people are trading in these things. So anyway, that's what I'm finding fascinating. And I have to admit, like 6 months ago, I was like, it'll never be anything. But when I realized it could be about empowering people over money by using cryptocurrency, then I thought, wow, this is all I want to do. I wanted to educate people about XRPL and how they could use that to empower themselves over money. But the rest of the economy, the people selling physical goods and services, have been slow coming to XRPL. So I thought, maybe I can speed up bringing people selling digital goods and services to the XRPL, and that will get all of the concepts across. So that's what drove me to actually join the project and say, quit thinking about helping people and help people.
So, question for you, and this is a hard one, but I'm very curious as far as the adoption timeline and we talked about S-curve before and that tipping point where people are jumping into it. And do you think it'll move faster than even the adoption of the internet and even the adoption of crypto if we treat the metaverse as a tertiary item? I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you see it? We're all immersed in the metaverse in 10 years or sooner?
I think it will be sooner because we're not starting with, 90s style headsets and everybody's got to be fully immersed. We're starting with 3D modeled environments on 2D screens. And I think most people are going to consume the metaverse that way. But if somebody is a performer in the metaverse, right? If they're an actor or a dancer or something, they might have mocap suits, they might have, rigged stuff on their guitars. People have these things that scan real world things and model them in 3D. They're going to be doing interesting stuff because they're trying to make this a vocation, and they'll be producing better content than the people will, they'll have higher fidelity avatars and experiences than the people consuming that will, until they make the jump and say, oh, I want to do something more immersive also. So I think we will get to a large number of people, like with everything, will start out passive. They'll just, it's like people watching people play games on Twitch. Why? I don't know. I'm old. That seems weird when you could just play the game. But, people prefer to start out passively and they go, that game looks fun. Maybe I'll download it now. There's going to be those people. Right. Then there's going to be people that come in and walk around and say, this is pretty cool. And then there's people that are going to walk around and go, oh, I love this. I'm going to do this crazy thing that nobody will think could happen. There are going to be people that want to cause mayhem or fun mayhem or whatever. And it's just going to make it lively. And those people will draw everybody else. I like to say I'm the genius. I'm like, no, I hope to be the person that people gravitate to first and tell me their ideas, and I help them build it. But the geniuses are the people that are really going to figure out what the platform's for, and they're going to draw an audience. And with the audience, money.
Yeah. That'll be a big incentive, big driver. Well, I think you and I will have to talk offline, even with Dirk, about, how can I participate in the metaverse? And dumb question for you, folks who want to check out xSpectar, how can they access it? Is it through the Oculus, the different VR headsets and so forth?
So right now there's a proof of concept that we have up on our website, and that's not the actual metaverse. It was everybody learning to build 3D models and environments and things here. We've just put together our first release, and you start to see some snippets from it in videos coming out of the next few days of the very beginnings of the permanent metaverse. But what I realized, before I got here, everybody was approaching the metaverse as pretty architecture. And you'll see a lot of people show you, here's our realized version of what our metaverse is going to be when there's 3 million people here. And it's this vast city of skyscrapers and other stuff. And suddenly I became very fascinated in, well, what's the metaverse when there's only 10 people there? You're like, they can't be wandering the wilderness all by themselves. That would be boring. We've got to give 10 people something interactive and interesting to do. And what is that? So that's what we're really studying now. What you would call game mechanics if it was a game, but now it's like interaction mechanics. And it's a weird set of things, and as I think about it, because it's things that people don't talk about. Social mechanics, like you're all alone, you arrive alone in this metaverse. How do you meet people, right?
Yeah.
Without seeming creepy, right? You might go in a bar and sit down at the bar and talk to a bartender, and then casually turn to the person next to you and start a conversation. That's a social convention we have now in the real world, right?
Bob, maybe a big part of it is online dating is another aspect to this, right? Let's meet in the metaverse and talk. We're not in person, and right, and we could take it to real life.
And so those things are, the key to the early experience. How do we take individuals and let them meet other individuals and form groups, right? So now you're a group of 2, then you're a group of 4. And then how do we take the group of 4 people who's now having fun together and wander on to find a different activity to do? Like, how many times have you done that in New York City, right? You're like, I'm here with my buddies, and you're like, let's go down here and do this. That's so common, but it's not common on the internet, right? If you're chatting on Twitter, you can't take your friends and go, oh, let's jump off Twitter and go do something fun. You're like, nope, sorry. There's, I couldn't even get you all to come on to Facebook to chat, or, it's on to Zoom. It just doesn't work that way. And so that's what we're working on now. So what we've done is what I've done is really realize I need to create the core of the metaverse. And I'm calling it the town square. Like, just give me a little place where when people arrive, they'll immediately see other people and they'll see other people doing fun things. And then we're going to work on ways for these people to meet each other in the metaverse and then do things, because that'll be the first mechanic. As you find that fun, you're later going to go, oh, buddies, download this app on your computer and meet me in the metaverse. And then you're just all going to show up as a group, and then you're going to go do fun things. That's another mechanic. But, people walking in groups, people having conversations in groups, you're sitting around on couches and you have that whole tennis match syndrome. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, it's like, yeah. We do that. I don't know. Maybe that's automated, so you can look at different people without going, A, D, A. That's
right.
Keyboard controlling this isn't going to be fun. It's like, how does this work? But it needs to be a way that you bond among people, and it becomes another location that you go for it to become the base that you want to spend time in. And then from then, there's other value will build on that.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. And I'm just thinking about different online communities. You look at things like meetup.com, where people go meet, about different topics. Let's go play basketball, pick up basketball, whatever, park or whatever, and just doing different things, axe throwing, different activities. And the town hall makes sense. And you can maybe jump into these different activities where people are already congregated.
Yeah. And around the town square, there will be buildings or facades of buildings with doors. And you go through in the doors to a totally different environment, right? And when you think about the real world, okay, you've been in New York City for most of your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now I want you to think about it a weird way. How much of New York City have you seen? And
boy, I would say 80% of it.
80%.
Mm-hmm.
80% of the outside or the inside?
So definitely the whole of Manhattan, the different boroughs, Queens, Brooklyn, Bronx, not so much Staten Island.
You haven't been in 80% of the buildings.
Oh, no.
You haven't been in 80% of the apartments, right?
Yeah.
You've been in 80%. You've seen 80% of the outsides, but there's a lot. The depth of New York is all the stuff that happens indoors with smaller groups of people in private areas and things. That's
for sure.
And that's going to be what the metaverse is too. You're going to go and you're going to wander around, and there's going to be this endless depth that keeps appearing, where you're going to meet new people and they're like, oh, there's this thing we do, but we didn't want everybody to know about it. So there's a secret door in the back of this place that leads to another place. And how many times have that happened in New York, right? I'm sure lots of times, there's like, so that's, the metaverse is going to be an experience where people keep building and growing this over time. And when that happens, there's always more value and more engagement, more things to do. And so I think where Zuck has made the mistake is he's jumped to particular use cases to justify this. Oh, people are going to be at work and they're going to put on these metaverse headsets and they're going to be discussing things with their colleagues in virtual reality all day at work. And like, no, they're not.
The incentive is not there.
Yeah. You're like, why? What are they going to do? Like, think of it, like a lot of people's jobs. If you just take beyond Zuckerberg, I work for Facebook jobs, and you work your way through all the other jobs you run across. It's like the guy making sandwiches at Subway, right? Is he going to be in the virtual reality helmet? He's like, no, it doesn't make any sense, right? That, there's certain use cases you may do for that, but you're not just going to pull one out of your out of thin air, right? And go, that's the hit one. Everybody's gonna go do their job, their desk job, um, like including the typist, the secretary is just answering call. Like, no, they just haven't hit on it. But the technology they're building is going to be a platform for other people to use. If they can make a headset
Sure.
really cheap, yay me, right?
Yeah.
Because no way I can afford to build headsets, for a billion people. But Zuck can. Thank you,
Sure.
Zuck.
So do you think he's ahead of the curve, but he hasn't found, to your point, like the incentive or the right themes to get people to come on board? He's losing a lot of money right now, but it may eventually turn around for them as this things
Uh,
pick up.
I'll tell you what he's seen, right? And I guarantee you he has seen this. So let's say I'm right and a billion people show up in the metaverse to interact with other humans and have a grand old time, right?
Mm.
Let's just say that I can make in collaboration with other people that happens. All these people are in the metaverse, they're spending time together. What are they not doing?
Working.
Well, that and what else? They're not on fucking Facebook.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
They're not on Instagram. They're not on all of, if you redirect people's time and attention, that's what Mark Zuckerberg sells to third parties
Mm.
is people's time
Yeah.
and attention. And he's looking at this going, people are going to be fascinated and their time and attention is going to go whoosh. And when it does, I want that time and attention to sell to third parties. And
Mm.
that's this mistake that he's making. Um,
Uh,
it's not going to be the same business model once you've done that.
all right, Bob. I got some wrap up questions here for you,
Oh,
and
go nuts.
it's very on theme here. If you could create your own metaverse, what would the theme be? Where would
Theme.
Bob escape to?
It's so funny. I really don't know. My actual metaverse theme is more escape to the real world, right? Where
Mm.
I want to go in the metaverse is really more like really fun places in New York City for the evening, right?
Mm.
But when I'm done, I want to take off the helmet and be back here in my nice cushy bed away from all of the chaos.
Right.
And, I want to go to those crowded, popular places briefly and then
Sure.
return back here. So I would say that's my metaverse
Kind of
experience.
like destination travel within the metaverse.
Yeah.
Maybe
But
it's
to
like a
see the
yeah.
people, like a lot of times now I'll travel to see the artifacts of what people left behind, like the
Right.
Eiffel Tower. But if you really want to go to Paris, you want to meet the Parisians who are living there now. You don't want to, be looking at the artifacts of what Parisians did almost 100 years ago. You're like, what are you guys doing now? What's fun tonight? Let's do
Right.
that stuff. And that's true all around the world. It's like I want to meet new people that are doing fun stuff and do it with them, and then come home and sleep soundly in my bed, away from chaos.
Yeah, I think I would like that too. To be able, okay, I want to go see what's happening in Hong Kong or something, right?
Yeah.
And what's the nightlife like? And then, but to your point, okay, I'm done. Time for bed. Take it off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um. Okay. Rapid fire questions. Favorite food?
Italian.
Favorite musician or band?
Oh, no, I would show my age. Um, no, if I had to go back, it would still be like Pink Floyd or some of the really old school.
Pink Floyd. One of my favorites. Favorite movie?
Um, Oh crap. Um,
These are hard, by the way. It's like hard to pick one.
they are. So let's stick with what I think because they change over time. Midnight in Paris, Woody Allen movie. Oh,
I don't think I've
great
seen that.
movie.
I gotta check that out. Favorite book?
Um, it's funny. Right now, my favorite book is Peter Thiel's Zero to One,
Ah,
um, about how to think about startups differently. It's brilliant, very short book. Everybody should read it.
Peter Thiel's one of those guys that fascinate me, and I watch him from afar to see what he's doing and his investments. So I need to read that.
It's so good because it frees you from all the things that hold you back in your head.
Hmm.
What he points out so eloquently, if you are really doing something new, like unique and brand new, then everybody else is going to hate it,
Hmm.
right? Because if it's if they already liked it, it wouldn't be brand new, right? It would just be the thing. So he's like, when you're doing a startup and you have this really great idea, you just have to presume everybody else is going to be a naysayer because they think if it could be done, I would have already thought of that. You're like,
Hmm.
nope, that's what new means. People are going to hate it. And then you go like, oh, of course they will. And it makes you feel less crippled, by the social, commentary of what you're doing. And so, people look at me and go, the metaverse seems crazy. And I'm like, yeah, but I have this germ of a new idea. And thinking about it the way you think about it, it is batshit crazy. But in this new way, there might be something there.
Hmm. Well, I guess the same thing could be said for crypto right now too, right? And what the battles and the headwinds it's facing. The old guard guys, the Warren Buffett's, Charlie Mungers, very,
It
very angry.
Crypto is gonna be a thing. And embarrassingly, when it really becomes a broad thing, and it has mass adoption and we're using it, then everybody's going to have this dawn of a realization that, oh shit, this is accounting. This is that boring shit we didn't want to study in college. It's accounting. Oh crap. And that's what I used to tell people in 2013. It's like, I can explain to you in the mystical, cool, crazy crypto terms, or I can explain it to you as boring old accounting. Um,
So when you're not working on an xSpectar, what are you doing for fun as a hobby or a pastime?
really, I hang with my kids and I hang with the neighbors and just chill. It's like I used to tell people I retired from being annoyed from by other people, right? And so I just spend a time uh, with very happy, relaxed people, a lot of which are older and retired too. But yeah, just this weekend I went to a uh, a Bob Seger tribute band um, concert out in the middle of a place in Texas you would never find, and you would think that there's a winery out in Texas
Wow.
selling custom made wine and hosting concerts with a lot of people sitting around drinking, and it's 72 degrees and perfect. Oh my
Wow.
God, it was like the most beautiful night ever.
Oh,
So,
that's awesome.
I take the time to find those opportunities when I can.
Yeah, I would not have thought of a winery being in Texas, but that's awesome. It's cool
Yeah,
to
it's like
I love discovering stuff like it, like these little even hole in the wall places in New York that not a lot of people know about, and it's a little bit of a hidden secret. That's cool. I love discovering things like that.
it's fun. Man, I closed all the windows so you wouldn't hear all the noise, and now it got hot in here. So it's
Well, Bob, really great conversation with you, man. I am excited about xSpectar. We got to talk offline about I would love to get involved in some way.
Feels like you
Um,
should now, doesn't
yeah,
it?
yeah.
I,
I certainly see this, metaverse as the future. I just don't know as a content creator, what's my angle? How do I get involved? How do I get started? And that's been always something I've been thinking about.
yeah. And so that's what we're working towards. My goal is to put out a developer kit, which is just like a starter kit. You can have a building, you can have an interior, you can mess with it. Um, you can run it on your own machine so you can practice and, do what you want to do. And then you can move it into the metaverse, connect it up for other people to see.
Sounds like a staging environment before you go to production, huh?
Yeah, and exactly. And what I want is to have no gatekeepers. I want anybody to, like in the old days, anybody could just build a website, right? You just
Right.
downloaded Apache, you started putting some words in a row, and poof, there's a web page. And I want people to have that feeling with these 3D environments for the metaverse. And at first you're going to go, is this good enough that I want to show people? No. Well, now is it good enough I want to show my friends? Okay, so yes. So it would be conditional access for your friends. And now is it good enough I want to show the world? Awesome. Now do I want to make a business out of it? I want it to be able to scale through those stages without having to ask permission from anybody.
Mm. Love it. Bob, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you for having me. It was a blast. I hope I didn't talk your ear off for longer than you expected, but
No, no, all good stuff. And I got to have you back on as things progress, but thank you.
well, all right. Well, thanks a lot.